Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective. Hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey, and got their flaps-cheeked Dom. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey and, in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. I don't know how to start this episode, Dom. I'm going to be so real. I know what we need to talk about, but usually I have something quippy, some loud sound effect or noise coming from me, some onomatopoeia, but I don't know.
I mean, the sound of claps cheeked. I mean, that there was quite a lot of sounds, a lot of goal horns going off when that happened.
Yes, you had a lot of great quotes from that game that we captured, and frankly, we really didn't even capture all of them. I should have captured some of your dad's. Your dad had some funny ass shit to say during that game.
Oh, my dad is actually funny, and he has no qualms with flirting with the line of what is and isn't reasonable in the realm of humor. He doesn't understand the difference sometimes, so I'm really glad that you could get that opportunity to meet him, hang out, and enjoy some of his humor, because I am the first one to say I know it's far better than mine, even if some of his jokes are a little cycled when I hear them at this point.
Well, thankfully, everybody, I did not have to say the Sharks Pledge of Allegiance. I did get to hear Dom and his sister say them. I met the rest of Dom's family. They were as lovely as all of you imagined them to be, although I guess I didn't meet your mom, so there you go. Bucket list for me. Gotta meet your mom at some point, as you do mine.
Yeah, I gotta bring you home to mom.
Oh, Dom, Paige isn't gonna like that. I didn't know it was that kind of podcast partnership. Oh my.
No, you'll just have to come visit and stay here with Paige and I for a little bit, since I want you to know, random fun fact not related to hockey at all. There's this couples game that Paige and I were given, and you basically have these different question cards and then write on a whiteboard and answer at the same time. And we thought it would be great if we were basically saying, if you could pick one person to be your roommate, pick one friend. If you and your partner could pick one friend to be your roommate, who would you pick? And so we picked one for each of us from like each of our friend groups, and we both wrote you down there, bud. So you'll have to come around again sometime.
God, you two are too much. Oh, so sweet. What if I'm an awful roommate? You don't know. What if
at the same time as my what? Go for it.
What if I don't clean up after myself? What if I don't spray? What if I leave the seat up? What if I'm just terrible? What if I snore really loud?
I mean, you won't be really terrible. If you snore really loud, that's why it's great. You'll be in the other bedroom. Since there's two. The seat up page might get on you for that one. I definitely went through a training period where it took a couple of months, and now I don't know any other way. But yeah, no, it would be great to have you come over again, no matter when. We still got to watch the Mighty Ducks movies together. Oh, and by the way, the Sharks are up 2-0 over the Blackhawks, ladies and gentlemen. What a great time to be alive!
Let's go! And with the new goaltending, we'll talk more about Spencer Knight upcoming. But yeah, he's been pretty stellar. So that is really great for them. And I'm gonna admit this live and on the air. I don't got to worry about putting the seat down because I piss sitting down. That's right, everyone. I don't bother. I just fucking rip them down and go to the bathroom right then and there, and I'm sitting down. So I have much less problems. I don't miss. I don't do nothing like that because it's not an issue because I sit down. So neener.
Fun fact, given the option, I'm the same way, and people make fun of me. Paige is surprised of it sometimes, and but I'm like, why?
It's so convenient.
Like,
why would I not do it?
I don't need to. Yeah, I don't have to share. There's nobody waiting. There's nobody I'm waiting for. I can sit at home, relax. That's the whole point of being on your phone or a magazine, right? You don't have to be taking a shit. Just woo-saw, no mess, no fuss. Like,
exactly.
I'm with you there.
The only
feel
time
like more people need to get on that train.
Seriously, the only time I don't is if it's like stadiums and like other public places. I'm never gonna sit down on a public toilet like that, especially in the men's room. It's always so bad. I'm just like, nope. And if I need to go do something more serious, I'm just waiting until I get home.
I don't know if it's a fun fact, but literally the last time I pissed standing up was at the Avalanche Sharks game.
There, there you go, everyone. Somehow this fucking conversation tied back into hockey. But okay, we'll
Uh,
we'll actually talk about hockey now. Okay. What the fuck? All right.
that was a fun detour. That is as authentic as it gets, folks.
Oh
Don't
my
mind us.
god. Yeah, there's no script on that one, everyone. We did not prepare for piss sitting down. That one was improv. But anyway, jokes and pissing aside, I wanted to talk more about Mikko Rantanen only because I was a little rushed in the segment before, and every single day the saga I think continues to change on the details that we learn. And I think the problem with this all is it's just so much he said, they said, I said, and I find it difficult to delineate what the full story is. I think that there is no question that Carolina, from Mikko Rantanen's perspective, was not a good fit. And how he went about telling them that, I think, is a little murky. Rod Brindamore stated that Mikko Rantanen came in and said, there are 4 teams I'll play for, and you're not one of them. And now it sounds like Mikko is somewhat disputing that argument. Now it's coming out that apparently the Avalanche and Mikko were only within like $500,000 of each other. And that really it was his agent's fault because the agent called Colorado's bluff. He thought there was no way they would trade him and that they would have up through July to actually negotiate. But obviously the Avs said, yeah, no. So all this is to say, I didn't necessarily feel like I was going to boo, and I'm not going to be at the game, but it's tough because I wish I could reach a wider audience to say that I don't necessarily agree with booing Mikko Rantanen. Now, I know I said last week I don't think he'll be welcomed back kindly, and that was not because I was going to boo him, but that's just because how I think the wider fan base will react. But I don't necessarily think Mikko is necessarily the villain. I think there was mistakes made on his agent's part, particularly. And obviously, he would not have been allowed to be traded back to Colorado from Carolina. The league would not allow it. And since he was so unhappy in Carolina, clearly he didn't want to take it through till the end of the season. And so he made the decision for himself. Obviously, I agree. I'm not at all happy that he picked Dallas and still signed for $12 million, but he also didn't ask to be traded. He also didn't ask to be traded out of Colorado.
Well, and that is a development. There was the potential, in a sense, where it was unclear if he did ask for a trade. So, in a sense, that's some closure that it's clear he did not ask for a trade. I always am going to be frustrated personally by the presence and how much agents take off the top in deals when it comes to all sports, and I understand why they exist and their purpose. I don't want to say their value because that gets eerily into the realm of money, which is what I'm trying to disagree with here. But I think it's frustrating, especially if it's that close. I mean, I don't know if that's really calling a bluff, and that's also where if it really is that close, that goes back to what we talked about previously of can the Avalanche talk to MacKinnon and see if he's willing to restructure if they only need 500K more? Like that, I mean, I personally think that would not be an issue. McKinnon wouldn't have that issue to be playing with his running mate. So very frustrating to see that that impact. I think also what you're saying is you recognize the reality of the situation and that there are going to be people. Not every fan is going to be as principled as you or I or everyone we hope listens to our podcast, but there are going to be those people, and so by recognizing or predicting that does not mean we are enabling that behavior.
And man, it's What did I want? Oh yeah, I think to me it feels like there were mistakes on all ends here. I don't think the Avalanche are completely clear of fault, nor do I think Mikko Rantanen and his camp are clear of fault either. But I think something that I lost sight of at one point is that Mikko Rantanen is still a Stanley Cup champion, and he helped bring that cup to Colorado. He was one of the biggest reasons on that 2022 team why the cup got here. And I wish some of the fans, because they are saying some not nice things on X preparing for his return, would remember and recognize that Mikko Rantanen, and it's fine if you don't, want to cheer for him anymore. I get it. He's on the biggest rival. We don't cheer for the Dallas Stars. No, not at all. But I think to villainize and completely deject him for everything he did here in Colorado is really losing the plot on the fact that he wanted to stay here. I don't think I think communication broke down before he was traded. And while I genuinely love both Marty Necas and Jack Drury, I think there was just a breakdown in communication here. I don't think things were done right from both ends of the candle here.
You're right. And I think, well, as much as you love Marty Necas and Jack Drury, they haven't brought you a Stanley Cup
Exactly.
yet, I will
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's something that you shouldn't be hating. There's a big gap between liking. There's a big difference between not liking and hating something. You cannot like that this one of your favorite players is playing for your hated rival, but that doesn't mean you have to hate and boo the person who, I mean, who's to say, yes, with all the talent the Avs had, you can't just point to one player. But like you said, they don't win the cup without Rantanen. So fans
Absolutely.
should be appreciative to him and show their respect to him for what he has brought them as a fan base of a franchise. And I think the only winner of all of this series is Dallas. And we've
Yes.
already
Yes.
said enough about the great GM gymnastics that have gone on in Dallas over the last few years. But there's one more loser that you forgot to mention, and that's Carolina. You're going to make a big swing like this, and it's been said so many times. Make sure the guy wants to be there and is going to sign. Get that in writing first, because if you should not sell your farm or a good portion of it. I mean, don't give the cow for magic beans. They might not end up being magic beans, and they might get stolen, or they might just run away from you because they're magic. So that's I guess what I'm trying to say is that the real only winner is Dallas, and of course that had to be the worst winner of all because of it's being the Avalanche's rival.
Right. And I mean, Carolina got futures. It doesn't help them win today, but they do have futures. So in theory, the Carolina Hurricanes could be great next season or 2 seasons from now. But that's what's tough is everybody's trying to win today. So they are not more likely to win today. But what I want to say is people are trying to compare Mikko Rantanen and Matt Duchene. I don't think that's fair or accurate because, again, Mikko Rantanen wanted to be here in Colorado. I think he wanted to get paid, which I understand, but he didn't want to leave. And the Avalanche, I don't think the part of him being shocked is a lie. I don't think that's a lie on any stretch of the imagination. But Matt Duchene, verbatim, with his words, says, I want to go play for a team that I can win with, or I want to go play to win. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he essentially called the Avalanche team a bunch of losers and incapable of winning. At no point, while Mikko, I'm sure, was very frustrated on the management end, has not spoken ill of the Avs. So I don't think it's, I can't believe I'm saying this, especially after the outburst I had fucking last week, but I've had time to reflect on it. I don't think it's fair to boo the man. Unless it comes out on recording him saying, yeah, I wanted to get the fuck out of that place. That place was ass. I don't think it's fair because he fucking put his heart and soul out on the ice every night for the fucking Avs. he brought you the ultimate goal, and I know he wanted to do that again.
Yeah, a lot of people who take this personally and just want to spew more hate, it's not helpful. He's not disrespecting you. He hasn't done anything wrong. I mean, he didn't choose to go to Carolina. He didn't like it, and he did all he could to get out of there, but he couldn't come back to Colorado, like you said. But the initial departure was not his choice. So
Exactly.
he should not be faulted, especially if he has done nothing to disrespect or demean anybody within the organization, the fan base, or just in the hockey world in general. There's no reason to treat him with disrespect unless he has done that to others, that general golden rule of it all. So, I agree with you that I hope Avalanche fans hear this or have their kinder and better judgments prevail when he returns here just in a couple short days.
And I mean, certainly there are things to be frustrated about. Again, he signed with Dallas and he signed for 12 million, and it feels like, well, hell, why couldn't that have worked out with Colorado Avalanche? Again, 12 million in Dallas is different than 12 million in Colorado due to the state income tax and Dallas having none. But it feels like, okay, well, why couldn't we get it done here? And I also, if I had to pick between him going to Dallas or Edmonton, I can't lie, I would pick Dallas. You all know my deep hatred of the Edmonton Oilers, and to see him play next to McDingle and Draisaitl would hurt me, I think, more than being punched in the fucking chest. And I mean, but the decision for part of it is Mikko's, part of it is Carolina's, right? Is other teams, especially Toronto, made a big push, but they failed to get their package together because Mitch Marner said no to waiving his it was either no move or no trade clause. And Dallas had the assets that Carolina was looking for. And so Mikko had the decision to make, and he decided that his happiness would be found in the contract that he got. And I feel like something could have worked out with the Colorado Avalanche, but at that point, I'd have to blame the management of the Avalanche and Mikko Rantanen's agent at that point. I don't think that was a Mikko decision, clearly. And I think the Stars is just, I don't know what the end result of all of this was. Not necessarily his fault, but just is what it is, unfortunately. Yeah, and it makes me vomit wanting to see him in that fucking shitty ass green, but ultimately I don't believe that he deserves to be fully villainized right now by the Colorado fan base at the very least.
That's absolutely, he should not be villainized by the Colorado fan base, but I have just a totally pivot question.
Yeah.
For considering the playoffs and the fact that New Jersey is just done with all of their injuries. They're not a contender anymore. They're just not. And Carolina selling more, and yeah, they're on a 5-game win streak right now. I did not realize they're on a 5-game win streak, but when you have teams like Columbus and the Rangers still in the hunt, do you see either of these teams, Carolina or New Jersey, missing the playoffs or possibly losing in the first round to a team like Columbus, who is more in this win now mode, or maybe a team like Montreal, Ottawa, depending on how the wild cards and the everything sorts out? I don't think right now Carolina and New Jersey would be set to play each other in the first round, and that doesn't project a change unless Columbus overtakes New Jersey. But I would just wonder what your thoughts are about that, Corey, considering how both of those teams got it certainly didn't get better at the trade deadline for this season, and so how will that affect the Eastern playoffs?
Well, for one, I don't see either of them missing. I think both of them are too deep in it at this point for them to really miss or risk missing, especially with the fact that the Eastern divisions are really more even Steven or even a little weaker than some of the Western like separation here. So I think in terms of like being in the playoffs, they're fine. There's no real risk there. I wouldn't also necessarily say that Columbus is win now. I think their group is just outperforming expectations at the current moment, which is why you didn't see them be sellers at the deadline, which, I think they deserve. They deserve a chance to go for this, and I really hope that they can succeed. Obviously, I don't see either of them, and who knows? I'll probably be totally wrong. I don't see either of them making it very far at this current moment in time. either Carolina or New Jersey. I think New Jersey without Jack Hughes is the same as, the Colorado Avalanche without Nathan MacKinnon. Yes, they can still win games, but when it comes to playoff time, it's just, you're not going to win. There's a reason that Nathan MacKinnon won the Hart Trophy last year and why he's a big candidate to win it again this year is because he is the engine that the rest of the Avalanche flow through. Same as, not quite on the same level, actually, as Nikola Jokic in the Nuggets, but same principle. Nikola Jokic really does fuel the entire Nuggets team, but Nathan MacKinnon is necessary to win a Stanley Cup. You don't win a Stanley Cup without Nathan MacKinnon. So same thing with the Devils. Don't win it without Jack Hughes. And Carolina, Logan Stankoven's been a great fit, but again, they acquired futures to be better tomorrow, but they are not better today. They lost their top scorer in Martin Necas, and then they lost their other top scorer, Mikko Rantanen. So I just don't really see, despite them having a great system, Rod Brindamore is a fantastic coach. Unfortunately, in the playoffs, you need to score to win. Even if you prevent the other team from scoring, which Carolina does exceptionally well, you need to score to win. And I don't see Carolina doing that.
I agree, and that's why I wanted to get your input because New Jersey's also missing Dougie Hamilton for the rest of the season. I'm pretty sure he is set to miss the playoffs as well, so that's another huge loss for New
And
Jersey.
that's on the defensive end too, so.
Mhm. I mean, Svechnikov is missing time right now for Carolina. Jesper Frost is out. I mean, so they'll be better by the playoffs, I believe. But it's these two teams are set to play each other in the playoffs right now, and that's why I wondered if a team like Columbus, who has games in hand where they've played two fewer games, I mean, if they can go on a little streak here, could they pass a team like New Jersey? That's I would wonder. I think you're right. They're not in win now, but they deserve the shot at the playoffs, and I think they're going to get a rough shake going up against Washington. Projected right now to go up against Washington in the first round, and really whoever wins that series should not have a cakewalk, but should the Metro, whoever is winning the first game for the Metro should be walking in to the Eastern Conference final because I just don't think Carolina or New Jersey either one legitimately contend either. They whichever team wins that wins one round and then is out in the next.
And I mean, to be honest, is Columbus also in the Metro? Just correct me if I'm wrong. They're in the Metro.
Yeah. Columbus is currently the fourth ranked team in the Metro.
Yeah, I mean, they're 5 regulation wins behind New Jersey and 8 points behind them. I mean, and New Jersey won tonight too. So unless New Jersey over the next 15 games just totally falls apart, which I don't feel like they will. I think they're still capable of winning, which obviously they're showing that. So I don't see Columbus catching them, but I also don't imagine that New Jersey will raise from where they're at third place in the.
And that's a fair point. Really quickly, I just want to share this for just looking at as it stands today. When we think about that might not be the greatest series or it might be a balanced series based on the state of both teams, but how about the first round matchups we would get? We would get a Kachuk rivalry, Florida versus Ottawa.
That'd be great.
We would get the Jets versus the Flames, classic Canadian battle there, big rivalry. Stars Avalanche, as you've put it, set to be a nuclear bomb that's going to be enjoyable to watch. Oh, and how about Oilers Kings for like the 5th straight year if the playoffs started today?
Womp womp.
That one's the boring one, but like it's still it's going to be a better series this year. The Kings are better than they were in years prior.
They've been better in theory fucking every year that they've been. And you know what? I'm not going to say who said it, but looking at it post deadline is so funny to me. Again, they have had plenty of great points, and I am not trying to attack them at all. I just want to say that I greatly disagree with this point, and I doubt they'll even hear what I have to say here. Again, not at all trying to flame them, just trying to say that I disagree with what they said. That they tried to state that the Oilers and the Avalanche are switching places, where when the Avalanche beat them in 2022, the Avs just had a deep roster up and down the lineup, and the Oilers, it was really just, McDavid and Drysaitel, and that was really it. Well, now it's like, oh, it's just MacKinnon and Makar, and oh, that Lehkonen guy's kind of good too, but otherwise that's it. Now the Oilers have this much deeper team, and blah 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 blah. No, 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 because it isn't just MacKinnon and Makar. Even when the Avalanche had a depth problem, which absolutely I agree with that part. The Avalanche did have a depth problem at the start of the year because they were super injured, and the cup tax hit them hard, and that's a fact. But that being said, you're neglecting Jonathan Drouin, who when healthy has been fantastic. Ross Colton, who at the start of the year when he stepped up before he got injured was fantastic. Valerian Nichushkin, when he hasn't been injured, has been fantastic. All of the Avalanche's top six have been fantastic. And now the Avalanche are so deep that they're having to healthy scratch guys because they don't have enough roster space for all of the talent on their roster. So, no, I don't think that's true. That's not saying that the Oilers themselves are not a deep team, but to insinuate the Avalanche, especially post-deadline, are not a deep team, I think is very short-sighted, especially now that they're healthy, because you'll notice in a lot of what I said, it had to do with injury. So, yeah.
We are in agreement on this. The Avalanche are certainly deeper post-deadline. They look legitimately dangerous. They are moved up beyond the wild card, and regardless, have more points, more wins on the season than Edmonton. So I think trying to insinuate that Edmonton has an advantage over Colorado really in any way is just whoever this person is, they're speaking with more hopes and dreams for their desire for Edmonton to win rather than the facts of the actual state of play in the league. Because not only does Colorado have more points and more wins, they are playing in the Central, which is far tougher than the Pacific. And it's really, yes, the West is deep, but it's really not even close. The Central is just insane compared to the rest of the
I
league
think
this year.
there are 6 teams that have 34, 36 wins, something like that, and 4 of them are in the Central Division.
It
So,
has to be in excess of 37 wins because or maybe it's
yeah,
more than
yeah,
that.
it is. I think you're right. Yeah, it
I
is
think it's
37.
39 wins.
It's 37 wins because Minnesota has 37, we have 39, and then Dallas and Winnipeg have 42 and 45. The only other teams that have excess of 37 are Edmonton, Vegas, um
Carolina, Toronto,
okay.
Florida, Washington, and
I
Tampa.
need to
Well, that's if you
read.
count
Hold on. I need to
37.
read. I need to read what the stat was. Here it is. Speaking of the Avs division, sorry, I misquoted the stat. It's 10 teams have won at least 37 games so far this season. 4 of them are in the Central. So I apologize, everybody. I misquoted the information there. It is 10 teams have won at least 37 games. So, but the fact of the matter is that 4 of them are in the Central of those 10, which is insane. It shows you how stacked the Central Division is because that runs all the way through the wild card, which is insane.
Yeah, that is the fact that the wild card team from the Central has pretty much all season been ahead of Edmonton sitting in the number 2 spot in the Pacific. Think about that. Whoever it is, if you're listening, think about the fact that your team is ahead of a wild card team with more points just because you get to play in the cushy Pacific where you get to play the Sharks more often. And I love my team,
I mean, in
but
all fairness,
you
the
get to play
Central,
the Sharks more often. You get to play Seattle more often.
to their defense, in the Central, we have 2 of the worst teams in the league. I mean, we do have the Predators and Blackhawks. So to their defense, we also have shitty teams in here.
Okay, fine. You have the Predators and Blackhawks, but then it's a jump up to St. Louis and Utah, who
Who
some
actually are
still consider to
somehow in the
be in the
hunt.
right. They're still in the hunt. Whereas then if you want to pivot, then you've got San Jose, Seattle, and Anaheim who are not in the hunt at this point. And I'm sorry, Nashville. is a more intimidating, dangerous team on any given night than Seattle. It is just my opinion. I see
Yeah, I
Seattle
agree
has
with that.
28 wins and Nashville has 25. But I Nashville is hitting their stride. They're on a 4-game win streak. They had all this talent that came into the season. Yeah, it's a process. It's taken a lot of time, but I, they're a far more dangerous opponent. So they're no easy opponent. They're sitting at the bottom, and of course, Chicago's been a team that's played the Avalanche hard all year long. So, you know, uh, I would just say that you know what, teach their own. We respect your opinion, Edmonton fan. You will make it to the playoffs, so I can't do anything to there's nothing I
And
can
probably
say.
do well.
Yeah, there's nothing I can say that would hurt you or that I would desire to have hurt you, but simply put, I disagree and
Yeah,
think the Avalanche
politely.
are a better team, a deeper team, and will go have a better series in the playoffs than Edmonton will.
We pray because man, this first round's going to be fucking dynamite. Well,
It's gonna be exciting.
we do have games to talk about, but I honestly have really enjoyed this line of questioning that we've had in discussions because I did come up actually, Dom, with a question for you and everybody. For the sake of this episode, we're not gonna do like, I do my segment, Dom does his segment, because there's a lot of games to talk about. I think I'm gonna cut one out because really it's inconsequential at this point, and there are other games that I'd rather focus on more. But Dom, I did actually have a question for you before we jump into some of your games here. If you're down to answer it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, before you hop into your brooding about the current state of play of your beloved Sharks, I do have something to ask. Mike Greer, I feel, has made his intentions for the team clear with how he approached the trade deadline. But with those intentions in mind, what do you hope to see now? He's made the moves that he made. So what happens next?
Well, what happens next is everyone currently on the Sharks is playing a job interview for the restricted free agents. Guys like defenseman Mukmadulin, who's a restricted free agent. He's really been stepping up and is someone I expect to be part of that Sharks core moving forward to get an extension. But everyone right now is interviewing to claim their role. If you're not named Will Eklund or Macklin Celebrini or Will Smith or one of the veteran leaders who's already been paid for the next 4 years in Toffoli or in Wenberg, your job is up for grabs. You need to go out there and take it. And there are a lot of young guys who are trying to compete for ice time, especially when you've picked up new guys at the deadline that are some of those prospects or those, again, younger guys. Ospachuk has not yet played with the team. He had some issues getting into the country with customs and such, but he has started to practice with the team. Um, We'll see when Askarov is healthy how much he plays, or if Georgiev's really going to finish out the season and Askarov goes for the run in the AHL. Um, but there are a lot of guys like Colin Graff, who I think should have their spot locked up. But they are playing right now to secure a spot. Patrick Giles, who was acquired, playing to secure a spot and prove that the trades that Greer made are worth it and that these guys deserve to be on this roster. But where do we go from here? There will be some turnover this year. We will see how the Sharks go about buying a team. But once we end the season and it's no longer worried about the trade deadline, playoffs are over, all of those picks Greer acquired are fair game to go into the trade market. And he has said this should be the last year of selling. He did not expect or come into the deadline trying to sell Zetterland or Wallman, but when the deals came, he thought they were worth it. And I'm not going to rehash those items because they've happened. It's done. Got to move on and use that equity to build. And he said that the tear down part of this rebuild, he thinks that is at an end, and it's time to start actually the building process. And Greer inherited this team in a state of like not really committing to the rebuild and having guys retire or stuck with contracts on aging players that we had to trade. And I love Brent Burns, but Brent Burns, Eric Carlson, Pavelski being allowed to walk in free agency. We still have the Logan Couture contract despite his injury. We're still paying a couple more years for a couple different guys' contracts that we retained. So we'll finally get a retention spot open for next year, which is going to also open trading things, especially when it comes to the deadline for next year's deadline. But ideally, this offseason, the where we go from here is the young guys who audition and audition well in these next couple of weeks and who really are playing well. And that's a lot of despite my struggles and my pain with the Sharks, I do have a lot of good things to say despite the losses of how they've played in these games since the Four Nations break. Like the first game I will cover tonight goes all the way back 2 weeks ago to the very end of February against Montreal. And I'm going to go through them very quickly, but there's value in each of those games to call out for some of these young players. We will start to see Greer go out and buy guys, make trades, swing for right-handed defensemen, and throw first and second round picks out there, offering them like they're candy, dangling them in front of teams, saying, "Give me your value. You want one of our prospects? Let's talk. We got the deepest pool. You want Quentin Musty? We don't want to give him up, so pay us for him. You want a guy like who else? I mean, we're not going to give up Dickinson. I mean, I hope we don't give up guys like Graf. So that's really what it comes to see is how well these guys play to see if they earn a spot and they prove to my Greer they deserve to be here. But then after he has that core that to build around really figured out at least for next year in his mind, you're going to see him go out there and I think early in free agency, he's going to go from being the biggest seller at the deadline to a buyer and start trying to get guys who have multiple years left on their contracts or guys in free agency that he can say, "Hey, look at what we're building here. I have all of this equity to go out and get more young guys or go trade it and buy other guys you want to play with. Come sign in San Jose for 4 years. Come sign in San Jose for 6 years. We also have all this cap space. We'll pay you a little bit more. How about all these guys who we brought in who were struggling and then they revived their careers and we sent them to good places at the deadline? 2 trades with Florida, top team in the East. Trading Granlund and Cece to Dallas, a top Western team. Like it's not only how he went about the trades to get value for the Sharks, but players
Uh-oh, I lost you, Dom. Pause
the
your thoughts.
businessman.
Pause your thoughts.
Yes.
Okay, I lost you at trade your players. Rewind.
So even though Greer has gone out there and has been trading players, it's not just about trading your players anywhere. He has traded them to playoff teams like Florida, like Dallas. And so other players are going to see this and see San Jose as a place that is worth going to. And if it doesn't work out and you need to be traded, Greer will get you to a good team and is going to do right by you. That helps when you go after free agents.
There you go. And
Sorry, I took a little monologue there, but
no,
honestly,
that's what I was looking for in your answer to that question. Because that's what I was wondering, right? And I think that's what a lot of people are wondering is clearly the Sharks were one of the biggest sellers at the deadlines. They were dropping pieces left and right, but it's what we talked about before. It's they have the core. Macklin, Smith, and Eklund are their big three guys, right? That they're looking for towards the future. Would have thought it was Zetterlund, but ask. But those are their guys that they want to build around, and they clearly have the talent and upside that's who you want to build around. So okay, now you have some of your other young guys coming in, but now you need to use everything that you've acquired from trading these pieces away to build around them and complement them in free agency. You don't build your core in free agency, you get your complement pieces in free agency and through trades. So that's what they need to do now, and that's based on what you just said. That seems like what they're going to do next once they've kind of solidified who they want to keep around based on what you're calling a tryout.
Yeah, well, it's just they're restricted free agents, guys like Kovalenko, Noah Gregor, Klim Kostin, guys who I think should be extended, probably deserve an extension, but they are going out there and it is a job interview because there's only so many spots on the roster. I mean, Patrick Giles has a couple years left, so one's going to think he probably has a spot, but maybe he ends up in the AHL. But that's where I think a lot of the core, a lot of the offense is there. Where there's the openings for guys to be brought on is going to be on the defensive side, especially when the Sharks are in need of more of those right shot defensemen. That is something, and you've got aging Mark Vlasic on the left. He should not be playing as a second pairing defenseman anymore. He's 37. He is our seventh defenseman if we have a healthy roster and sign correctly. And yes, we're going to hopefully see Dickinson come up and play. I mean, again, I mentioned his name, but Quentin Musty is expected to be part of the core. Not to mention, you still have guys like Philip Biestet in the prospect pool. You have Thomas Bordelau, who he is interviewing down at the AHL level because he's a restricted free agent who might just be sent out. Guys who've played with the top team like Daniel Gushkin that are also restricted free agents. You have a lot of these guys who are young. The prospect pool for San Jose is so deep that no one, even if you're a prospect, is safe. You have to be a core prospect and earn your spot. And that's I think a lot of the offense I think has started to come together. The Sharks offense has been really good. I'm just gonna say it now. I was gonna say it later. In the Sharks' last 4 games, they have outshot their opponent in each of the last 4 games, including against the Avalanche. They had more shots on goal.
Well,
You knew this, Corey.
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I
Yes,
won't.
you are right about your wells, and we will get to why. But the fact is that the offense can go out there and fire the puck. And yes, they played teams like Buffalo, New York, and Nashville. But these other teams that are better than them on record right now, people might think are better. The Sharks went out there, went toe to toe, and looked the better team for great portions of the game. So imagine that next year with all of this, all of what Greer can now stop selling, start buying, and with this core figured out, it's going to be fun to watch. This team is going to have a serious jump next year if he does it right at the start of free agency.
Well, I will not hold us up anymore just because we've been, again, though, I've really enjoyed this conversation because we didn't plan for it. I mean, I planned that question, but everything else preceding it, we didn't plan for it. It was good. It was good. But Tom, tell us about games 1 and 2 from the tank.
Well, thanks, Corey. Yeah, I'm going to go through these, try to go through them rather quickly since they were such a long time ago. But since I've never had a chance to bring these games to you, the last games I brought to the podcast were actually the ones you talked on my behalf, going all the way back to Winnipeg and Calgary
Goodness.
when the Sharks started their Canadian road trip right after the end of the Four Nations face-off. So these are games 3 and 4 on that road trip, actually. So crazy. We're going to flash back 2 weeks in time here, all the way before the deadline. What's really important in this first game against Montreal that I'm going to cover, it was an overtime loss. The final score was 4-3. Will Smith had a very strong February. He tallied a goal and assist in this game. He's really coming into his own. Too late to be in the Calder conversation, and let's be real, I want Calder Brini to win it anyway. So maybe too little too late in that sense, but he is really growing into his own. He's finding his game. His confidence is going up. His level of play is going up. Another great sign when we're talking about the core looking ahead to next year. But he, like I said, he had a really good February. Um, After a back and forth first period, it was actually his goal who put the Sharks up 3-2 in the second. But Corey, as you and I know, and everyone who's been listening to us all along knows, if the Sharks go into the third period with a lead, they are just destined to lose. I saw a stat a while back that something like when the Sharks go into the third period with a lead, they win something like 40% of the time, which is, I think, something like 17% lower than the next worst team in the league when they start the third period with a lead. So it's pitiful how the Sharks collapse in the third period, and they did that again. They did allow Montreal to get a game tying goal in the third, and then proceeded to give Montreal not just one but two basically back to back power plays that really zapped all the momentum. So luckily they didn't concede goals on those power plays, so it was tied 3-3 and went to overtime. But they really anything they had, any advantage they had coming out of the second period, they squandered it early and were just trying to survive to overtime at that point. Which then in overtime, Cole Caulfield did Celebrini's ankles so
Oh
dirty.
my God, he
And
sent that shit to the ceiling.
yep, and fired home the OT winner. So that was that fourth goal meant Forgiev made an appearance. But overall, he actually had a decent game in that game. Before that OT dagger, if you think about the fact that he had 29 saves, if he only gives up 3 goals, I'm talking about him having like a nearly 900 or a basic 900 save percentage night. Instead, he gives up the game winner and his stat line falls. So it wasn't a bad game by any means. It was definitely balanced. The Sharks, I think, gave the Canadians more of a challenge than Montreal expected. Who, of course, now Montreal was struggling coming into it, and they've really fallen out of the playoff hunt in a sense, but then they're trying to push back. It's hard to tell with them. They're an enigma. Anytime I compliment Montreal, they start to fail. Anytime I hate on Montreal, they start to succeed. Same with
Don't
Detroit.
listen, Montreal fans.
Like for Montreal and Detroit this year, anytime I've hyped them up, they've just started to collapse. And then when I start to like complain or just say, "Wow, I was wrong about that," then they start to say, "Oh no, we're gonna get back at it." So I'm done trying to predict those two teams in the East, and we'll just see where the chips fall at the end
Don't
of the
even
day.
try and predict the East, Dom. It's not possible at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I was it was a foolish mistake on my part to try, and quite ambitious one. Um, but moving right along, just to keep going through the games, the second game I was going to cover here, going back to March 1st, so 13 days ago when you hear this, it was at the Ottawa Senators. And of course, the game against the Sharks is when the Senators decided to get healthy with Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris, and Shane Pinto all returning from injury on the same night. And that's just, I mean, and Brady Tkachuk's presence was felt. Like the game against Montreal, there were barely any penalty minutes. There was like two power plays the whole game, both for Montreal, like 4 minutes combined penalty time. And that was just not the case when you go up against Brady Tkachuk and Ottawa. The ref's arm went up so many times in this battle, and it was 4 power plays per team, 20 combined penalty minutes with 0 fights in those 20 minutes. So that is 10 2-minute minor penalties between the two teams. And it was Shane Pinto, one of those names I mentioned, who's in his first game back, who was the first to score for the Senators. So I'll have you know, the first 4 combined goals of the night all came on the power play. But Corey knows this. Shane Pinto did not score on the Ottawa Senators power play. No, no, no. It was a shorthanded goal allowed on San Jose's first power play chance of the night. And what was really frustrating about this game, and I watched it start to finish, and that's why I have a little bit more to talk about on this one, is the Sharks took it to the Senators in the first, and were just doing everything in their power but getting the puck past Olmark. I mean, they certainly got goalied in that period, and the shorthanded goal didn't help. Just to help stress this a little bit more, if I remember correctly, or no, that was they had something like 15 shots on goal in the first period and just couldn't get past Olmark. And then in the second period, the script was flipped and they could barely get a shot on goal. Their forecheck kind of died and Ottawa's physicality just took over. But then the Sharks finished the period as the second period leading 2-1 with power play goals from both Tyler Toffoli and Tim Liljegren. So just a little backwards, right? The Sharks deserved more than they got in the first. They didn't deserve jack really in the second, but capitalized on their power play opportunities and took the lead. So what can I say? Um, but of course, they took a 1 goal lead into the third. Corey, so what does that mean?
Means they're gonna lose.
I have it here just spaced out with periods after every single word. The Sharks cannot win when leading in the third motherfucking period. Like,
That feels a
I
little
don't.
ass backwards there, Dom.
Yeah. Um, the Senators scored 3 in a row, like in the first 5 or 6 minutes. I don't have the exact number of the third period, including the one that really got me going was the second one, which just came off of a horrible bounce, like kind of off the boards and off of Vanacek behind his own net, and so it was just a wide open chance. Really, it was just sloppy. Like you go into the period with a lead, then you give it up on a power play goal, and so it's tied 2-2. You're in your opponent's building. It's the third period. You gotta rebound, you gotta bounce back, and then you just have some sloppy turnover play that gives them the easiest goal known to man and a free lead, and they never looked back from there. Will Smith was able to score late with a 6-on-4 power play to cut Ottawa's lead to only 1 goal. Once again, the kid was playing really great on this road trip. But the Senators answered quickly with an empty netter to send the Sharks packing with no points, despite the solid performance where, through good portions of the game, they did outplay Ottawa, and Ottawa is a playoff team. And that's what I keep wanting to say is that the Sharks offense is going toe to toe with these playoff teams and is looking the better roster through 5-on-5 play. It's the special teams where they're really suffering. But even in this game, the Sharks power play went 3 for 4, which was really awesome to see. Something where the one time they're not struggling, their penalty kill just couldn't get it done, and their defense just let them down. Vanacek let them down. I mean, the key takeaways are the Sharks' blunders and Olmark's talent really defined all of the momentum swings in the biggest moments of the game. Because the Sharks' offense was there, their power play for once was there and consistently there, and so I mean it was awesome. You go 3 for 4 on the power play, think about it. They were nearly perfect on the power play, but they gave up a shorty on the fourth one. Like it's just such a crushing thing. Like take away that mistake and how much better that looks, and how much better the result could be. So a lot of ifs, ands, buts, and what could have beens, but another loss with no points for the Sharks.
And, unfortunately, you can't dwell on the what ifs. For example, the Avs could have had a dynasty if Landeskog never had a freak of freak accidents. That's a what if we'll never know the answer to. And unfortunately, Dom, not to play spoiler here, a lot of what you've said about this game, I think, and you can absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, is going to translate into a lot of what you have to say about other games. It's very much a second verse, same as the first, where the Sharks are indeed competitive in these games, but once again, lack of finishing power and I think poor goaltending is really their downfall. And, as much as I want Georgiev to succeed for the sake of the Sharks, I think you are huffing a little bit of copium whenever you try and find, you're having to scrounge for any positive to bring up about Georgiev, when I think it's plain to see that he is just, this year at the very least, is just not his year as a goaltender.
I have to say you are completely correct that this, I will say, just the
I'm
second act,
sorry.
same story post trade deadline. But where you're wrong is actually after I'm gonna pass the baton back to you because I've been on my soapbox here and I want to hear about some Avalanche games as well. Help me re-energize. But
You're
maybe when we come back, I can tell you about a back-to-back that the Sharks were able to do very well on, and that Georgiev was a huge part of the reason. So you know what? I agree. Man is struggling. He is a shell of himself, and he is the reason the Sharks have lost a lot of games this year. He's the reason the Avalanche have lost plenty of games this year. But he's also the reason why I'm talking about a couple of wins tonight. So, it's
fair,
such a tough
fair.
position to be in where you've said it, where it's like he has two, three solid games, and then he falls off and has like four that are really bad. Like for every two good games, then he has four absolutely awful ones. And that is the Forgive. That there's it's just, it doesn't make sense. It defies all logic, and it just is the reality of the situation. And thankfully, I hope and pray he's not part of Greer's plan, because God, please don't let me watch this again next year.
Well, I have very bad news for you, Dom. You are about to not be re-energized because I'm going to jump straight into the Avalanche versus the San Jose Sharks.
Oh boy.
So, everyone, it's time for the Avs versus the Sharks extravaganza. Why is it extravaganza, you may ask? Well, that's because, everybody, this game was essentially, it wasn't the actual day, but this game was Dom's birthday. So, everyone, wish Dom a happy birthday. And if you don't, I'll find you. I'll find you. Your wish of a happy birthday, or I'll find you. Anyway, yeah, so that's cool. But if I had to really describe this game in one word, that word would be comedy. This game was comedy. Because no offense to the Sharks, Dom. I'm not trying to talk trash when I say this, but it was like the Avalanche were playing an AHL team out there. And that's not necessarily the Sharks' fault, because as you pointed out to me at the start of the game, Jake Wallman was held out later to be traded. What was it? Luke Cunnin was held out. And obviously
Yep.
Wallman was your number one guy. Who else was anybody else held out that game that was
Those were the
important?
big two. I believe either Henry Thrun was back that game, but then missed good chunks because he came back for one game and then was re-injured, so he did not play very many minutes in that game. So that was another defenseman down. But yeah, when you consider Luke Cunnin, who's our third line center or slash winger, really stable piece, eats up a lot of minutes, and Jake Wallman, who was averaging over 23 minutes a game. He's like, I think he played up to 28 minutes in a game for the Sharks this year as our number one defenseman, our power play captain. operator on the blue
Exactly.
line, and I mean he played on the penalty kill. Both of those players, Cunnin and Wallman, play on the penalty kill. Not to mention having already traded away Nico Sturm earlier, so that's another center guy, another penalty killer, and a face-off machine.
I
So
was gonna say.
Sharks were down a lot of pieces by the time they got to this game, and I didn't realize they were going to be down so many.
So
But yeah,
yes.
it gave Joker "My Life's a Comedy, Not a Tragedy" moments where I was just there, just couldn't help but agree with you. It was a comedy with my pain.
And I mean, and that's why the Sharks were definitely lacking in staff on an already young team against an Avs team that I think was really raring to go. And that's not just due to the fact that I knew they were salivating to get after Georgiev the first time in San Jose, but now they were certainly looking to do so here back in Ball Arena. And I think it was, exclamation point on that when Yoel Kiviranta was once again not necessarily once again the first person, but once again scored on Georgiev, and it was all the funnier that it was on the power play.
Yeah,
Or
and I
on
mean,
your power play, I meant to clarify.
yeah, here's another case of the Sharks allowing a shorthanded goal. I don't have the stat, Corey. I know I told you some number, but like the Sharks are one of the worst teams in the league with shorthanded goals against this year, which is when you give up some of the best guys on your blue line who captain your power play, that doesn't help make it any better. Um, so yeah, it was pretty bad. And this, which I'll bounce back and cover the games I was talking about next, but Georgiev had his two good games, so he was bound for that regression to start struggling. And yeah, it just came at the opportune time for the Avalanche, and it just a combination of so many factors that really put this game in a bad spot. I think it was like 4-1 or something like that when I predicted the final score would be 7-2, and I just was like, I looked over at you and I'm like, that's where this game's gonna end. Something like 7-2. I think my dad said 8-2 to you, and what was the final score? Like seven to
7-3.
three. So like we were right there. We as Sharks fans, we saw what was coming, and we sat through it. We kept watching, and that's I think I when I started to see how many of the guys the Sharks were missing, I definitely started focusing less on the actual hockey on the ice and more on just having a good time with you, my friend, and my sister, and with Paige, and my brother being there, my dad, all the whole experience, the family aspect, and just getting to be at a hockey game and enjoy Ball Arena for the first time in a while.
Absolutely. I did look up the stat for you and found that the Sharks are actually in fourth place. They have allowed 7 shorthanded goals on the season. The Panthers actually have allowed 8, and the Lightning and Bruins are tied for first, each having allowed 10 shorthanded goals this season. So just a little tidbit for you there. But I described the first period as fast and loose hockey, which I think was fair because there were 4 penalties in the opening period. And to again, the Sharks' credit, they kept the game close in that time frame where I believe we ended that first period 2-1. So I mean, you guys didn't walk away with nothing. And at that point, it was still a very close, very not necessarily winnable, but game that your team could have stayed in, right? And that discipline only continued to be poor in period 2, in which it took 3 seconds for Marty Necas on the power play to, as I quote, unleash an absolute missile straight at Georgiev from near the blue line. My gosh, it was just fantastic, honestly. And you gave us one of the first great quotes of the night because I quote right here, I think the Avs are beginning to pick up the pace. They are starting to skate around the Sharks and take advantage of poor passing like the Penguins did to them. To which then you said, how are you guys so fast, Dom? And I said, the Avs are circling like sharks in the ozone. Which you responded, they are chomping at the bit on the power play right now. And yeah, the Avalanche got goal number 5 after a near 2-minute zone possession, probably more. But your guys had a good push in the final minute and a half or so of that second period, but we're still getting outshot pretty drastically. I don't even know if you'd made it to 10 at that point. But
Oh,
then
we had, but yeah, I mean, it was at the end of the first period. We crossed double digit on the shots. We rallied. Then that's when we got a goal to stay in it
not
at
the end of
least
the
after
first, end
one.
of the second.
Well, yeah, no, that was at the end of the first, and then at the end of the second, it was similar where we kind of started to show some push, like the last 5 minutes of a
Yes.
period.
Yes.
Other than the third period, well, actually, that's probably when they are best in the third period is the last 5 minutes, ironically. But that's typically seems to be when the Sharks give their best push. So that goes beyond the Avalanche game. But yeah, it was both the first and the second period when that's when we saw them play their best hockey against the Avs. It seemed like. But
I
other than that, they were a step behind out there to say the least. And
I
just really quickly, for everyone listening, yes, that is our authentic repartee. That is not us planning anything like we do, or like even when we script things and take notes, some of these things just come truly authentic in the moment, like that whole exchange that you just heard from Corey. It was a beautiful time.
so I disagree. I think their best was in the third because again, I think they finally crossed 10 shots on goal by the end of the second. But the third they had like 20 plus. But we'll get to that. Just to end the second period, I want everybody to know that Dom and his dad and all the other Sharks fans around me, I was literally surrounded by Sharks fans behind me, fucking everywhere. They all agreed that Keaton Middleton's goal was a good goal, and it was bullshit because that was his first goal. Ross Colton was pushed into Alexander Georgiev. Can't believe they waved it off right away. But the score was already 5-1, I think, at that point. So Jared Bednar was like, I'm not going to bother challenging that. But it was very disappointing to see good old big boy Keaton Middleton get his first goal taken off the board. So I was very disappointed in that.
Oh yeah, I was disappointed in that because when you look at the replay, he was pushed at the front of the net and still barely made any contact with Georgiev, who was not able to see and was not going to make the save anyway, and was like at the very, very tippy top of his crease. So like borderline pushing into the defenders or the offense's range. They're outside the blue paint. Like I thought it was a soft call. We've said it time and time again, and we don't have to rehab the conversation. But I really think they need to discuss, reinvestigate, redefine what is goaltender interference, so it is clear to all of the officials and clear to all the teams playing and clear for us fans, because it was the weakest call I've seen, and I've seen far more obvious goaltender interference cases waved off or said no, it's a good goal and it's not interference. So it's just really confusing. And you're right, he deserved the goal. The Avs shouldn't challenge it. It's not worth the risk in that sense. But honestly, they should have to give him his first goal, because even if you give us a power play, we were losing 5-1, and we weren't coming back in that game.
Listen to the goalies. They will tell you what goaltender interference is. Also, Dom, were you not going to announce that the Sharks have gone up 3-1 on the Blackhawks?
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt this authentic, but yeah, Colin Graff, one of those guys I talked about, 2 goals so far on the night. 7 minutes to go in the second. Will the young kid, that is his 4th career goal tonight, with 2 of them. So he's literally doubled his career goal total. Hat trick at home, anyone?
That would be great.
Everyone talking Macklin Celebrini versus Connor Bedard, and then here comes Colin Graff out of left field. I'd love to see it.
You do. Well, everybody, to really summarize this game, because this is the one we want to talk the most about, because this is the one that we were at together. Everybody calls Georgiev Forgiev, but in this case, as Dom called him, he was Sevgiev. Womp womp. But
yeah, I did coin the term Sevgiev, and I did like a whole thing with like my arm where I was like, I hereby dub thee Sevgiev. I don't know if you caught that part or not, but I did
not
do that at one point.
Not. But some not necessarily history, but huge milestones were made here in this game specifically because Cale Makar had 6 points. The last time any Avalanche player scored 6 points was in a game against St. Louis by the legend Milan Hajduk in 2007. Obviously, Chris Letang as a defenseman had 6 assists, I think, in 2023. But Cale Makar, the last time this specific stat line was seen, 2 goals, 4 assists, was not seen since Paul Coffey in the 80s. We are watching true greatness at work, everyone. Oh yeah, and let's not forget that Nathan MacKinnon had 5 points in this game. 11 points between the two Avalanche's top players. Talk about getting ahead in the Art Ross race. Oh my goodness. And Cale pulling
Take that,
ahead for
Leon.
defenseman. Seriously. But I mean, we stopped taking notes in the third because at that point, the game was pretty much over. And to summarize, the Avalanche really did sit back. And, that's because they're already running up the score as it was. And I think, Dom, they're honestly trying to gift your team a professional courtesy because there is no mercy rule in hockey. But this turtling, as you described it, allowed the Sharks to really begin to push back, which they did push back well. They obviously got 2 goals of their own, and it was a little too late. But I respect the fact that the Sharks never quit and, in fact, put up over 20 shots in that period alone and ended up out shooting the Avalanche by game's end and ended up getting those goals. And again, too little too late. But it is, to me, an excellent sign of growth for this young team that despite holding out several veterans and the best players on their team for this game, they still came at it with a can-do attitude and still played it like they were trying to win, even when they were down 7-1.
And that's what we expect. That's what we want to see. Because again, this is where the job audition's coming in. You got to be a professional. You don't play until the 60 minutes are over. Speaking of showing what we want to see, Macklin Celebrini got cross-checked to the head a little bit ago, leading to
Oh
that
yeah, I'm
next
seeing
goal
this
after the
fight.
power
Oh
play
goodness.
from I think it's Jason Dickinson who it is here for Chicago, who's the guilty party. Well, they just came back from commercial break and just cut to Barclay Goodrow standing and trying to take him in a fight. I mean, Dickinson got the better of that fight for sure. Goodrow is not a good fighter, but that's what he does. He's the veteran. He's the fourth line guy who's always going to stick up for his team, his players, especially the superstar Macklin for a cross check to the head that was only a 2-minute minor. And Macklin was down for a second. He is okay. He's continued to play. I'm glad that there was a response. And it was instant on this face-off here where Goodrow was on the ice at the same time as Dickinson and instantly wanted to make sure that fight happened to send a message. So glad to see that personally. Bouncing back to the game against the Avalanche, though, you guys absolutely played. I mean, I would say a damn near perfect game, if not perfect. Mackenzie Blackwood, when he did face a shot, he was making great saves. Um,
You guys had a couple really good shots, truly.
well, and then there were all those like super easy ones that Georgiev have made that my dad would say, "Great save" on the easy ones that just added some additional comedy that like we were talking about before. But for me, the highlight of this night or this game was, for those who don't know, with International Women's Day, it was like girls and or slash women's night at Ball Arena that we neither of us knew that going in, but it was lit up a very beautiful pink that you got a picture of, Corey.
Yes.
But really,
Go
what was
see it on our
exciting is
Instagram.
yeah,
Sorry.
go see it on our Instagram. Like the picture of us together, being happy at a game, and showing that fans of opposing teams can be friends instead of the guy 5 rows behind us who, instead of celebrating the Avalanche goals, just said "fuck the Sharks" every time, being a toxic asshole. But I won't stick on that for too long because no, I'm thinking of something positive. And it was, as you might have talked about, Corey, or they have commemorative pucks for different games
You
like
do.
this, and just small little things. They're not too expensive to get, and it's a nice little memento from your time at the game on those special occasions. They don't happen every time, but being that it was for celebrating Girls' Day, Women's Night, I was so happy to have the opportunity to be able to get my sister and Paige each a puck, and wouldn't you know it, it actually brought Natalie to tears,
Yes.
and really brought her so much joy, and I didn't realize it helped her with some healing from a time that she was not able to get a puck at a different game. So that story and just knowing that I could really bring her some joy after the suffering of the game that I put really my whole family through by asking them to join. That was a nice highlight for me. And then she actually, when my family visited over the weekend after the game, just a couple short days later, she brought actually a puck display case. She had got them right away the next day and brought one for Paige as well. So just a really positive like experience and something all around, and something that I think we should always be encouraging, that hockey is a sport for everyone. And I'm glad to see that we still have these type of events, or highlight these things and encourage more people in the league from all backgrounds, but it's not just this thing that's we see guys on the ice that are men, but there are women's leagues as well. The Sharks fans behind us played for a junior Sharks women's team. So that was just really cool to see all around and a great experience to be a part of.
Very well said, Dom. And really, I don't have anything additional to add on to it other than, I was very honored to be there. Like I already said, it was a pleasure to meet your family. And it was honestly so sweet seeing your sister so moved by the simple gesture of getting her the puck. So just lets me know how close you and your family are. And it was just honestly really sweet. I'm glad that despite being the only person who was not a member of your family there, I felt like a member of your family. So it was awesome, even though I had to be surrounded by Sharks fans.
Well, as a brief detour, that was the price of entry for you to be the Avalanche fan surrounded by sharks. No, but seriously, you are, and we're going to take it sappy here for just a minute, and then we can get back to our
Oh
regularly scheduled
God.
programming. You
Skip
are a
ahead,
part of my
everyone.
family. You are my brother. So, you know what? I think I said it once when we were there, but it mattered to me that you were there, my friend. You are my guy for all things hockey. I said it before we started recording tonight to everyone, but you really helped reinvigorate my love of the game by inviting me to do this podcast and really just sucked me back into this world, something I didn't realize I was missing in my day-to-day life. So I appreciate you, and there's no one I would rather be going to a hockey game with than you. And I just want you to know that. And I think you know that, but I hope you do know that, because as much as I love my family, I think that being able to talk throughout that game and just enjoy that experience together and embrace our mutual love of the game, regardless of the fact that your team was pummeling mine, I think that was also the real highlight of the night.
Well, thank you, Dom. And oh my God, I just had a massive brain fart. I'm so sorry. I wanted to follow that up so much more eloquently. There it is. Found it. Thank you, Dom. And really, what you said about reinvigorating your love and of hockey and bringing about that passion is what I think I and this podcast as a whole. So we want to do for everyone out there listening. So if you're less of a hockey fan, that's what we hope to do for you. Is we hope to help you find or realize a love for hopefully the Avalanche, but if nothing else, for hockey in general. Of course, Dom and I are still always learning. We have never hosted a podcast before, but we genuinely love talking about hockey. So to do it for, the number of you who listen every week, who you have all gotten us to over 400 listens on Spotify, which is honestly really, really cool. I never thought I'd be able to say that. And even though the audience is small, I can tell that not everybody who listens to it is simply a member of my friends and family. So it's honestly really cool to have people out there. But that's what we don't want to do, right? Is we want to reinvigorate. We want to instill a love for the game that Dom and I love so much, because I know y'all want to go to a hockey game with me. So that's all right. Maybe one day, but not today.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one day, who knows? We joked about it, but you might see us in the broadcast booth up there in a couple years if you go to an Avalanche
Fingers
game. Wouldn't that be
crossed.
something?
That'd be incredible. Well, to end off this game, it was, or the discussion anyway, the game was one that was interrupted with the trade for Brock Nelson, which was quite an entertaining endeavor due to the fact that we were at the game and not watching it on TV like much of my family. So created a situation where I had three people telling slash texting me all at the same time that the Avs had traded for Brock Nelson. While this is going on, the Avalanche continue to score goals, and the game is still happening. And I'm trying to ask everyone what we traded for him, because I knew it couldn't have been Casey Middlestat because, well, it's happened. I doubt in today's NHL we would trade a player mid-game, so I'm racking my brain trying to figure out who's missing in the current lineup. Eventually we find out, and they announce it much later into the game, but needless to say, it was quite the fiasco.
And how about we talked about it there, but the last little comment was they asked Cale Makar about
That
the Brock
was
Nelson acquisition right after the
That's
game.
so funny, because you could tell Cale Makar learned about that trade in that second.
And yet he handled it with such class, spoke very, very well, very eloquently. So it was very funny to see, but also like proud of him. Great, quick on his feet. Great thinking skills right there after playing a long game and a really strong game. Think about, I mean, 6 points, like crazy.
Yeah. To put into perspective how insane 6 points is, not only for just a player, 6 points is insane for a player, but for a defenseman to score 6 points in a hockey game, I would say it is near akin to, not quite, but near akin to Nikola Jokic's double triple double. It's
Oh
it's
yeah,
The
yeah.
only reason I say it's not quite the same is because a defenseman has scored 6 points before. Oh man, I guess it'd probably be better if I put it this way. It's of the same volition of a guy dropping a 70-point game in basketball. It's happened before, but it's happened so incredibly rarely. You know what I mean? So I'd say there we go. I think that's a better comparison. Is
It
a
it takes a
defenseman.
special player that is having a special night, even by their standards.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's one thing if it's a forward who does it, but it's all the more remarkable that it was a defenseman who did it, because that's not necessarily what a defenseman is there. Obviously, Cale is offensively minded, and you can see that in his point totals, but 6 points is overly remarkable.
Kale is one of a kind, but that doesn't mean that we can't stop to appreciate that what he did, as you put it, was completely and totally remarkable. So we should give him his flowers, no matter how many times we say "All hail Kale." He proves that he deserves at least one more.
Oh, Cale. Cale. Well done. Who are you? Well done. How about you give us your next game from, or games from the tank?
Yeah, so I will bounce us back just a couple days before the game against the Avalanche and take you all on a journey to Toronto to face the Maple Leafs and actually deal them a streak breaking thing on both sides, breaking a Sharks losing streak and a Leafs winning streak in the game. So I might have spoiled the result, but I'm going to take you through how this game went, because the Sharks were nowhere near as good, and they did not play very well. Not nowhere near as well as they played against Ottawa or Montreal. And they were honestly lucky to find themselves down only 2-0 after two periods, thanks in part to really great play from Georgiev. Both goals came on the Leafs power play, and I honestly can't fault Georgie for either of those goals that came in the second period. And when it came to the third, the Sharks displayed a lot of pure grit and strength of will, sorry, to fight back into the game. First, it was Jack Thompson scoring with his family in attendance before Toffoli tied it up midway through the third. And this is something we see where Toronto's a place where a lot of NHL players are from, or they still live in the offseason. And so this was a home game for both of those players, for both Thompson, who had his first chance to really play in front of his family and score a goal in front of them, and Toffoli, who, like I said, that is a place he considers home. An important thing to note is that both these goals came off assists from Alex Wenberg, who has been underappreciated, but with the now since the trade deadline, obviously this game was before the deadline. He is now wearing the A on his jersey, but he's really stepped up his leadership. But his play on the ice has been so good that we've been seeing him play on the same line with Toffoli and with Eklund far more, which is effectively, or on the depth chart, shows as our top line. So he has replaced Celebrini on that line, which means Celebrini is now playing more and more with Will Smith, and it's really been great for everyone all around. But what Wenberg has been able to do, being an Apple machine more recently, as you might say, Corey, it's been a great improvement, and it's also very good, exciting for the Sharks, considering the type of play that was provided by Mikael Granlund, being able to fill in for some of those assists that were lost and still have some top six line chemistry and see those coming together, a vision of what could be next year. And Wenberg is someone who we do expect to be with the team for a couple years in this leadership role, and an overlap with where the rebuild is supposed to finally hit its success and hit its stride. So just really happy to see that. He deserves a lot of credit for being setting up those great passes and getting those two goals to get the Sharks back in the game. The Sharks would actually, with those two goals, force overtime and eventually a shootout. Despite Corey, I remember texting you about this. They had to. They almost let the Leafs snatch victory. First, giving a power play late in the third period that just gave me anxiety, and then even worse, a power play right at the start of overtime. So they started down a man, or not down a man, but Toronto up a man, and they killed off an entire 2-minute 4-on-3 power play in overtime. Some great saves from Georgiev and some really good penalty killing. For all my qualms with the Sharks penalty killing recently, they killed their asses off, and that doesn't even make any sense of a statement. But you know what? They did. Their penalty kill was stellar. They had the best chances of overtime where they nearly won it. And then they went to the shootout, which historically the Sharks have not been good in shootouts this year. But it was actually Fabian Zetterlund, before being traded and making us all cry. He was the one who fired home the shootout winner in Toronto, actually in the fourth round of the shootout. So Alexander Georgiev making enough saves that it had to go to extra shootout rounds. Just absolutely, no matter the fact that Fabian Zetterlund scored, Alex Wenberg was giving up assists left and right. Foley having a great game. Great to see Jack Thompson get a goal. He's back in the AHL right now, um, for the Calder push for the Barracuda. But someone who we expect to see with the team in the future, full time, hopefully. The player of the game still for me has to be Alexander Georgiev, because without him, the Sharks would not have been in this game. He kept them in it through two periods. He stood tall through the penalty kill in the third, and then again in overtime, and then especially in the shootout. So really, without Georgiev, and no matter all his faults, he is the reason the Sharks won this game. And as a key stat, when I talk about all the games that the Sharks lose when they start the third period with the lead, this was the first time all season that the Maple Leafs have gone to overtime, first gone to overtime, and lost that combo when leading in the third period. They had not lost a game at all this season when leading at the start of the third period. So crazy that the Sharks, who struggle with a lead just for a night, gave that to Toronto and were able to fight back and get the win. And like I said, it was not a good game. They did not deserve to win if you look at the full 60 minutes or 65. But they stood in it. They fought back and they got the win. And so it felt like some restitution being paid for the prior games against Montreal and Ottawa, that just the breaks didn't go their way.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was the most remarkable part to me. I forget what the record was, but the Leafs were like 27-0-0 when going into the third period with the lead. So they literally had not lost all season if they had gone into the third period with the lead. And of all teams to not only break their win streak, but that streak to be the Sharks is just glorifying. I loved it, sir. I loved it. So I was watching that game actually alongside you, so I was very glad to see the result go in a positive direction.
Yeah, great. A great night. And like I said, where might surprise you, but when Georgiev just has those flashes of brilliance where he's just like living in his younger body from when he was on the Avalanche in a playoff caliber team, he really can be a shutdown goaltender for a night. He's not dependable, he's not consistent, but for a night, he can get you a win
Oh
every
yeah.
once in a blue moon, and it was huge. It was something I think I needed to break an 8-game losing streak, especially after feeling like 4 straight games against these other Canadian teams. When we talk Calgary, Winnipeg, like they should have beaten Winnipeg. They were 30 seconds away from beating Winnipeg with a shutout and then lost 2-1. Like, crusher. And then you get to Montreal leading the game, lose in OT. Ottawa, play a great game, better team 5-on-5. It really, generally speaking, lose the game. So it was overdue. And so ironically, the one game where I didn't have a lot to compliment them other than their fight back. And their fight back is what it took to win.
Exactly. And it got them the win. Did you have another one here for a
Yes.
back to back? Yes. Okay.
Yes, that was the first game of a back-to-back, and well, it helps that they left Canada and they took a trip down to Buffalo to play the Sabres. And oh, Buffalo, how we all around the league love to beat up on the the Sharks. Had a
Oh,
great shooting performance in this game, netting 5 goals on a mere 27 shots on goal with an empty netter
oof.
to make the final score 6-2. San Jose never trailed and went off for 4 goals in the third period to score wins on both games of the road trip back to back. We've talked about this, Corey. It's cruel to have a road trip back to back where you have to play the game at night, get on a plane, and then this game in Buffalo. was started less than 24 hours after the one previously ended. And you have to have a flight in between there. Just absolutely brutal. But and then to win both of those, not only to win both of those, it was even more impressive that Georgiev was there and he was the starter. Once again, finishing with a respectable stat line, 20 saves on 22 shots faced. But he played every minute of both games in the back to back, tallying 125 combined minutes, 2 wins, including a shootout victory in less than 24 hours. Say what you will, he has been awful all year round, and I won't dispute it. But for that 24 hours, man was playing just out of body.
Maybe that's why he got absolutely lit the fuck up by the Avalanche, because you were telling me how he has at least 3 good games in him, but you know, the Avalanche were number 3. I think he used all of his power for those first 2, to be honest with you.
Well, and what you've said is it's like for every 2 games, 2 or 3 games he wins, he loses just as many in a series, right? And he won 2. I mean, he's started basically ever since the Sharks traded Vanacek, which came um, which Vanacek was held out of this game against Buffalo and the one against Toronto for trade related reasons. And Tuesday he would be traded to the Florida Panthers, as I've discussed previously. But with that in mind, he has started every game since then. So he started Toronto, he started Buffalo, he started at the Avs. He also started in my final games that I will cover against the Islanders, the Predators, and he's starting tonight. So he is the do it all starter right now, at least until Askarov is back to full health, because they're not trying to rush him back from his injury. Next season is obviously far more important. Um, some key stats from this game, just to wrap it up. 6 Sharks players finished the game with 2 points, with a further 5 registering at least a point on the stat sheet. So 11 total Sharks getting a point in the game. Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini, like I said, have returned to playing on a line together with Alex Winberg taking over as the top line center. Although sometimes we do see they've started to double shift Macklin Celebrini. We have seen him out there for multiple consecutive minutes at a time, first playing with Toffoli and Eklund, and then flipping to a line with guys like Colin Graf. And I mean, we've seen him double shifting on the power play a lot now too, where he'll be on both units at times, depending on the zone pressure and when guys will change or how his legs are feeling at any given moment of the game. Why that is important is because superstars, at least ones like him, if they can take on more minutes, then why wouldn't you want them to? They give your team the best chance to win. And yes, the mileage, and you don't want him to get injured. But right now, while he's getting ramped up and he's in a Calder race right now, it's a really tight 3-horse race right now for the Calder Trophy for the best rookie this year. And it's going to be an exciting road to the finish. Give him a chance to go out there and go full Calderbrini and prove to everyone that he deserves it. So, really, really important to note. But he and Will Smith have been on that same line, playing with a lot more chemistry, like they started the season. Very, very happy for me. And I mentioned his name a little bit earlier, but Shakir Mukhamadullin is really starting to find his form as well, and become a more and more solid defenseman for the Sharks. Could be a cornerstone piece moving forward since he's a pending RFA. I'm hoping that Greer sees the value and gets those restricted rights, gets him signed for the next few years.
Good. You have 2 more games to cover, correct? Or do you have more than that? Am I miscounting
No,
here?
two more games. I would like to talk more about the one that was just most recently on Tuesday. The other one from Saturday will be rather short.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we're good. We're so good. Alrighty, everybody. Post trade deadline time. The Avalanche, oh boy, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Big Cock Brock. I want everybody to know, and Dom would know, that I came across a jersey that said Big Cock Brock, and it was an Islanders jersey. So obviously, I'm not going to get an Islanders jersey, but I want to make this promise that if the Avalanche manage to re-sign Brock Nelson for the next few years, I will order that jersey. I will make that jersey just in the Avalanche number 11 that he's wearing, and I will make the Big Cock Brock jersey. Making that promise right now.
Yeah, that's that I think it was funny when you sent it to me, and it's easy enough to make a custom one, and it just rolls well. It just rolls off the tongue, you know.
And you know, Dom, I'm saying this because I want you to hold me to it. The big cock Brock jersey. Only if Brock signs an extension to remain with the Avs, which based on the early results, I really hope he does. I'm hoping he gets his first goal here soon, but let me tell you, everybody, it did not take Brock Nelson long to make his impact felt. Oh, I meant to say, I'm so dumb, everyone. I'm sorry. I am just spacing out. Of the 3 games post trade deadline so far, Toronto, Chicago, and Minnesota, there was a point, I'm like 90% certain it was against Minnesota, but the Avalanche had to kill a 5-on-3, a near full 2-minute 5-on-3, and they did it. And it was an incredible bit of work by their team, but it probably wasn't against Minnesota. I'm just totally misremembering, but I do remember them killing the 5-on-3. I've had a lot on my mind lately. Dom knows this one's a little too personal to share on the podcast, but I've had a lot on my mind lately, so I don't remember which game it was, but they killed the 5-on-3 for 2 whole fucking minutes. It was really impressive, and I just wanted to give the Avalanche penalty killers their flowers because, man, it was quite the performance by them. Dom, you know how hard it is to kill. You know how hard it is to kill a 5-on-3 for 30 seconds, let alone for 2 whole minutes.
Yeah, trust me. Watching the Sharks, it is hard to imagine getting a 5-on-3 penalty kill. So that is very impressive. Congratulations and kudos to the Avalanche PK team. That is a very rare feat to see these days.
I need to sneeze. Hold on.
Bless you.
There it is. Thank you, Dom. All right. But Brock Nelson immediately in the game rings one off the iron. And you could tell that him and Valeri Nichushkin, which the duo they are calling the Twin Towers because they are both 6'3", 6'4", respectively, are just meant to play together. They are 2 big bodies on the ice who are wizards with puck possession and puck repossession. If you need a puck back, Brock Nelson and Valeri Nichushkin will go get that for you. And Brock Nelson's first point, which was an assist to Valeri Nichushkin for his first goal of the night, which would eventually turn into a hat trick. It was an absolutely nasty feed between the legs of a Leafs player. And I have to give the Maple Leafs credit for this game because the Avalanche were playing incredibly well. I think defensively, they limited the Maple Leafs' chances a lot. But when the Maple Leafs had a chance, my God, did they take it. And both Mitch Marner and John Tavares got 2 goals on this game. And yet, when the Avalanche were down 4-2, it truly didn't feel like they were out of it. It did not at all feel like they were out of it. I still felt very confident going forward into that game. And that's really reflective of the confidence and swagger that you could feel the Avalanche had on the ice. You could feel from the group that they were confident that they could win. And obviously that showed in the results. And I could feel it even watching through a screen that this group never wavered in the fact that it felt like it could still achieve victory in this game despite being down 4-2. And I mean, that push came late. I believe they left the second period down only 4-3. But I mean, you not only have to get that tying goal, but you have to get that go-ahead goal, which, you know, thank goodness for Nathan MacKinnon. He ends up getting the go-ahead on the power play, inching him one step closer to 1,000 points, which we'll get to here in our next game after Dom does his next game. But really, again, I have to give the Maple Leafs a lot of credit. And Anthony Stolarz has been stellar all season. So the fact that the Avalanche were able to get 5 past him to take the lead in this game is really impressive. But also, again, credit to the Maple Leafs who made Mackenzie Blackwood look very human. And Blackwood by no means played poorly in this game, but I mean, he got ripped on by the Leafs a few times, but thankfully he did enough to where the Avalanche could still claw and pull their way back into this game. And I mean, it was full team effort. The tying goal came from Charlie Coyle's first point as an Avalanche player, who he has looked exactly like how you would expect Charlie Coyle to look. no offense to Casey Middlestat. I think there was a chance he just didn't necessarily fit here like how we needed him to. Hoyle gets in hard behind the net, fights off a check, and then makes an absolutely gorgeous pass out to Druin, who isn't even his line mate. It was a partial change to Druin in front of the net for Druin to bury it. Literally an identical play that Nathan MacKinnon and Arturi Lehkonen had not too long ago to set up another goal in a very similar way. So, I mean, all the new guys, and Ryan Lindgren also had an assist on, sorry, that was on Nichushkin's first goal. Nelson was on Nichushkin's second goal. So Ryan Lindgren from the blue line throws one down. Nichushkin flies across, gets the deflection, scores the goal there. All this is to say, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, is all the new guys contributed in the same game. So the results were very immediate in this post-trade deadline against a very good Leafs team. You know, say what you will about the fucking Leafs. This is a good team. And they also did a great job addressing their weaknesses at the trade deadline as well. So the Avalanche, in a barn burner, really pulled out the win, I think, in a fashion that I think people should be scared of.
I think when you said something about comparing to a previous deadline, the one prior to when the Shark, or not the Sharks, sorry, I'm still in that mind. The Avalanche went on to win the Stanley Cup. And talking about when they went out there and bought, but also how the team depth was just so dangerous that all four lines were scoring. It was just a potent offense that everybody should be scared of and was scared of, could come back in any game no matter how much they were behind. They were never out of a game. And that this post trade deadline, what we said we thought they would have with the additions for the depth, it was on display against their first real playoff opponent. And you know that I I I think that all that is to say is that we're happy to see these new Avalanche players are adjusting quickly and that the team is not lost a step at or anything with the transition, but also that our best hopes and what we thought, Corey, about them being a far better, a deeper team, a far more dangerous team seems to be accurate, and that the Avalanche are a legitimate contender this year.
Yeah, you took some of the words right out of my mouth. I think I'll expand upon it more when we get to the Chicago game here, because there's a couple more points that I want to make with that game specifically. But I think that's all I wanted to highlight from the Toronto game. Also, with the fact that Valeri Nichushkin got his first regular season hat trick, which he absolutely deserved. And he has been since he got back against the Devils. The Avs, this is a spoiler for after the Chicago game. The Avs won all 6, which is a first in Avalanche history, by the way. They won all 6 of their homestand games in a row. That has never happened in Avalanche history. And that is in no small part due to the absolute engine brain that is Valeri Nichushkin. And he was in full force against the Toronto Maple Leafs. When this guy is going, good fucking luck stopping him. And he does it even more so in the playoffs. I'm telling you what, God, please, if Valeri Nichushkin is fully with the team throughout this playoff run, good luck stopping us. Seriously, I think the Avs had a great chance of still coming back and beating Dallas had Valeri Nichushkin not gone out. So I'm last year. So I'm telling you, watch the fuck.
Well, and what you just said there, the Avalanche survive I mean, they're on a collision course to meet Dallas in the first round. They survive that round. I don't know what team in the league is more dangerous to them because Dallas is literally fielding an all-star team these days, basically with
Really, though, they really
the trades
are.
and everything.
I have a lot of respect.
If the Avalanche can beat Dallas, that rival, that X relationship with Rantanen and just all the things, I just it would seem like fate that they would just continue marching on.
Yep. Yep. Well, we still got a couple more games to get through, so Dom, it's time for your next game from the tank.
Well, this was the Sharks' first game post-trade deadline on Saturday, March 8th, when they finally were off of their long 7-game road trip and returning to San Jose. They hosted the New York Islanders. And they really came out with a fury, gave the fans a show, and were determined to prove that they were not giving up despite the trade deadline fire sale. There were a lot of questions. Some of them I felt were a little bit unfair, asking the guys about being called an AHL level team or about what to play for, how they motivate. And some of those questions are fair, but like asking an NHL player about rumors or have people call them an AHL team is just a little bit of a disrespectful line of questioning. Um,
No
but really,
surprise there.
yeah, they responded though. And this game was defined by Sorokin just saying no as he goalied the Sharks. He faced 40 shots on goal. San Jose had 19 shots on goal in the first period alone. 19. By comparison, I believe the Islanders finished the first period with 7. 19 shots on goal. By the way, 0 goals. Sorokin, again, some great opportunities, and he just decided that it was not going to happen. He was not letting anything in. And that happens sometimes. There's sometimes nothing you can do when you run into a goaltender who's just having their night. And Sorokin's no slouch of a goaltender either, Corey. I'm sure you would agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's a Russian goaltender, so he's good.
Yeah. So ultimately, they actually, by the end of the first period, were trailing 2-0. So Georgiev, continuing his bad play, gave up 2 goals on 7 shots, while the Sharks could not just buy a goal, get one pass despite 19 shots and some really good chances, some high danger chances. I mean, at best for the rest of the game, you could say Georgiev was mediocre, but I would not consider his play good in this game. He certainly did the Sharks no favor in this loss, and it was just the offense was struggling. Of all people, someone who hasn't scored in a while, but you'll like to hear this, Corey. It was Nikolai Kovalenko who got the Sharks on the board in the second period on a power play goal off a Shakir Mukhamadullin blast from the point. So getting that depth scoring for the Sharks in a game where their top lines, despite everything they threw at Sorokin, just couldn't get a goal, couldn't buy a goal. So it's always interesting how that goes sometimes. Where if Celebrini can't score despite all his shots, Will Smith can't score, Toffoli can't score, and all these guys have. I mean, Celebrini finished this game with something like 12 shots. That is insane. Like Corey, we talked about this previously when you talked about Natchez and MacKinnon and how many shots per game they take and how like 6 is really high. And here Celebrini's just casually having 12 shots. It was yeah, just frustrating, but gave me hope. Like, hey, this team, when they get all the pieces together and actually have Askarov healthy in net and can count on their goaltending and go out and buy some defensemen who can actually play defense, this team is going to be a lot more of a thorn in people's sides next year than they were this year, and that gives again a lot of hope, a lot of excitement to look ahead to. Just keeping through the rest of the game, the Isles put up another quick pair of goals in the third to stretch the lead to 4-1, and the game was really over from there. Will Smith, once again, actually, did score a 6-on-4 power play goal with a minute and a half remaining to pad the stats, but it was certainly too little too late. So, not the first time I've said this. So, when you said earlier, Corey, second chapter, same story, second act, same story, you were 100% on the money. I guess I would say the key stat here was both teams went 2-4 on the power play in this game. So both of the Sharks' goals did come on the power play. And once again, they were struggling with only a 50% penalty kill. Their penalty kill has been struggling, which, again, to be fair, has to do with a lot of their veteran penalty killers who they counted on being traded at the deadline. So that does play a role. I'm not trying to discount that. But the good news is the Calder-Brini chase is still on as he logged assist on both Sharks goals, so he is keeping in that point scoring race. And Corey, anything you'd like to ask or add from this Sharks New York Islanders game? Otherwise, I'll pass it back to you for your next game.
To put it into perspective, how many shots? 12 shots. Was it shots or shot attempts?
No, that's shots on goal.
Oh my goodness. How massive 12 shots on goal is. Again, I always go basketball, which is funny because I know nothing about basketball. I've learned more though because I have a lot of basketball friends. I'd say it's the equivalent to shooting, don't think that's fair. I was gonna say
Okay,
like 12.
sorry.
I was gonna say
It
like
was
12 3-point attempts, but that's just
so
not
10 of them were registered as shots on goal. 2 of
that's
them hit
still
the post.
insane. 10 shots on goal is a monster game. You know what? No, fuck it. I'm not gonna compare it to another sport. I don't care if you know hockey or not. I'm gonna put it to you like this. Imagine if a team has 25 shots on goal in a game. That's a good game. That's a productive game. That's pretty typical. 20 to 30 shots, 25 to 30 shots is pretty typical for a normal NHL team. That's about where the Avs sit every game. Because, of course, you know, you're going back and forth in a game, and you don't always end up getting the shot on the goal. You shoot towards the net, but it gets deflected, it gets blocked, whatever. So to actually get a shot to the goalie on the net is really hard in the first place, which is why scoring in hockey is so fucking insane and hard. So imagine, right, how many shots do the Sharks have in this game, actually? Do you know?
They had 40 shots on goal.
My God.
Let me tell you this number. Celebrini and Toffoli, those 2 combined for 17.
So there you go. The fact that Macklin Celebrini had a quarter of the entire team's shots by himself. And again, if this were a normal game where they weren't offensively pounding the Islanders, who are not very offensively minded themselves, they were not offensively pounding the Islanders, and this was like a normal like 20 to 30 shot game, Macklin Celebrini could have had anywhere from a third to half of the team's shots with 10. That's a monster effort. Even if none of them go in, that means you have the puck on your stick. You are getting the puck through to the goaltender, which you have to thread it through 1,000 other guys trying to stop you from doing that exact thing. That is monster. That's all I wanted to say in regards to that.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat. The kid is a superstar in the making, and I'm excited, blessed to get to watch him wear my team's colors and wear that beautiful black and teal. But Corey, I know you have another game to cover, so let's hear what the how the Avs' latest game went.
I would love to. So first, I'm going to lead you off with this, everyone. On October 9th, when the Avalanche dropped the puck, this was their roster. Line 1 was Nathan MacKinnon, Jonathan Drouin, and Mikko Rantanen. Great line, though. Line 2 was Casey Middlestat, Nikolai Kovalenko, and prospect Cal Ritchie. Line 3 was the Roaring Twenties line of Ross Colton, Logan O'Connor, and Miles Wood. And line 4 was Parker Kelly, Yoel Kiviranta, and Ivan, with your defensive pairs being what you'd expect: Devon Toews, Cale Makar, Sam Girard, Josh Manson, Calvin DeHaan, and Sam Malinsky. Your goaltending tandem being Alexander Georgiev and Eustace Onanen. During that game, they don't have it listed here necessarily, but Arturi Lehkonen was injured, and obviously Nichushkin was still out at the time. Your Avalanche roster lining up against the Maple Leafs and going forward, although there are some rotating guys here, our top line is Nathan MacKinnon, Arturi Lehkonen, and Martin Necas. Your second line is Brock Nelson, Valeri Nichushkin, and Jonathan Drouin. Your third line is Charlie Coyle, Yoel Kiviranta, who has had a great year, by the way. So I just need to pause real quick and say, anybody who shits on Yoel Kiviranta, shut the fuck up. He's been awesome this year. And Ross Colton. And your fourth line is a rotation, although Jack Drury is the mainstay. Jack Drury is your fourth line center, flanked by Logan O'Connor or Jimmy Vesey, but it depends on the night. Sometimes they didn't say here that Miles Wood was scratched, but he was. And you have a couple other guys like Parker Kelly also was scratched, so he comes in. So basically your rotation is Logan O'Connor, Jimmy Vesey, Parker Kelly, and Miles Wood, rotating in throughout your fourth line, with your defensive pairs being Devon Toews and Cale Makar, Ryan Lindgren and Josh Manson, which is the fuck your bones defensive pair. So that's fun. And then Sam Girard and Eric Johnson, although you also have Keaton Middleton and Sam Malinsky as your other sixth defender. So Eric Johnson is not, necessarily playing every game. And your goaltending tandem is Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood. So to say that the Avalanche have completely restructured their team from top to bottom to go from a fringe playoff team who I still believed could do some damage. That opening night team definitely couldn't, but from where they were before, like day before trade deadline, I think they could have done well. This team is a fucking threat to your existence. I don't care who you are. This Avalanche team is a fucking threat. And this is insane how much the lengths that Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic and the rest of the Avalanche management went. Cale Makar said they had to give the management a reason for them to invest in this team. And my God, this was probably the most aggressive trade deadline by them in recent memory. They said, fuck it, we'll do it live. Here we go, motherfuckers. So I know that was put super eloquently, but all this is to say that this team is dangerous, and I love it.
Well, just consider the amount of injuries, the amount of roster turnover, and all the things you've said. You said Kovalenko was on your second line to start the season.
Second line.
He is playing on the Sharks' third line at best. So you are telling me the Avalanche, who all season long have been better than the Sharks, had Kovalenko starting on their second line, and now we have him on our third line. That is insane, just to show you the scope. And I'm trying to blend this together from the Sharks and Avalanche perspective, because if the Avalanche are the better team, you would expect him to shift further down the lines, right?
You could.
The Sharks might need him to play higher up, and maybe that's not shouldn't be an expectation, but it could be surmised. So the fact that that he has actually fallen down the depth chart, I mean, one, it speaks good about the Sharks, and I'm sorry I'm taking this little opportunity to talk about it.
Absolutely.
But two, your roster really has had an insane amount of turnover, in the depth that you've criticized and finally went through the 5 stages of grief to process is no longer an issue, I would say, or at least not an issue nearly to the same degree, because every good team will have nights where their depth scoring is absent, and that's how it goes. I think the Avalanche depth is legitimate now. We've said it time and time again. This team is a 180 to where it started the season. I mean, hell, Blackwood and Wedgwood. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that the goaltending alone is a 180. Everything else is just a bonus. And so that the deadline just really added even more and further committed to this belief.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Dom, because let me tell you this. First of all, the Avalanche addressed every weakness they had at the deadline. So every weakness has been filled. And throughout the 6-game homestand, where again the Avalanche won every game, the only forward without a point was Jimmy Vesey, who only suited up for 2 games. Every single forward on the Avalanche roster scored or contributed to a point or a play at some point during the 6-game homestand. Fuck your depth. The Avalanche are shitting it out of their ass. They have so much depth. They have a great problem because they have multiple 4th-line centers. They've had to shift Parker Kelly to the wing. Jack Drury was the 3rd-line center, and he can definitely fill that role. But now he's the 4th. Eat my shorts, motherfuckers. Now, the whole idea that I want to get behind with this Chicago game, because I don't need to go about it play by play here, is, Dom, you may recall me talking about the fact. Well, first of all, sorry, let me jump back here. When I said that the high-flying Avalanche offense were dead, screw that. That's a lie now. They're back, baby. Anyway, point I wanted to make with the Chicago game is, for so long, the Avalanche could not win these close games, right? When the scoring was hard to find, when the goaltender was playing super well, they just couldn't find ways to break through and win these games. Didn't matter if their offense was firing, they were getting pucks to net. They just couldn't find ways to win these games, or at the very least, like they did with Minnesota, push it to overtime. And now they can. Chicago's been giving this team a hard time all season, and they held the Avalanche scoreless throughout most of this game. And the Avalanche obviously did to them. They shut them out. Go Scott Wedgwood, Wedgie, who I need to give credit to there. The Avalanche won this game because, unlike so long throughout this season, they couldn't push through. They pushed through today. And they have continued to do that in every game. And I anticipate when the games are close and all you need is that one goal to win, the Avalanche are now the team that will be able to break through and get that goal. That is who this team is now. Everything they weren't before, where they could not push through to get the wins they needed to either keep up, stay ahead, whatever, they can get those wins now. And it was demonstrated on a Chicago team who I don't give a fuck where they are in the standings. Spencer Knight is a better goaltender, and the Chicago Blackhawks shit on the Avalanche 2 times before in this season. This time they fucking broke through and beat them in this game.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that they were able to break through and not be swept on the season series by the Blackhawks. That would not be a happy fact to report. I honestly just need to pivot really quickly because the Avalanche need to work on some of these nicknames. Wedgie, Twin Towers, Blackwood's nickname you told me about. Like, come on, man. I don't know who's coming up with these names out in Colorado, but they need some help.
I like Twin Towers.
I mean, it works, but goddamn, like they're flirting with some dangerous territory on some of these lines. Like Wedgie isn't dangerous.
Yeah,
but who wants to be called Wedgie?
Dude, Wedgwood does, all right? All right, leave him alone. He's fine. We love him. Wedgie. It's the only time you want a Wedgie, bro, when Wedgie's shutting out the Blackhawks.
But fair enough.
But before I pass it back to you for your quick final game, and before we round it out here, there was a historic moment in this game, but I have to set it up for you like this. Dom, imagine, if you will, that you are Nathan MacKinnon, who has lost one of his all-time teammates in Mikko Rantanen, who unfortunately was not a part of his 1,000th point. But you have this new kid on the block, Martin Necas, who has stepped in so valiantly, and you can see Mikko Rantanen in him on this play where Arturi Lehkonen gets ahead, feeds it back to MacKinnon, drags it to the front of the net, who passes it across for an absolutely gorgeous backdoor tap-in for Mikko Rantanen. But it's not Mikko. It's the new blood, Marty Necas, who has stepped in so valiantly and is now Nathan MacKinnon's wingman for this historic moment. Of course, it's an assist for his 1,000th point. It would never have been a goal. His 1,000th point of all time, which is a remarkable milestone, 100th player ever in NHL history to get 1,000 points. It's a beautiful number. Couldn't have asked for anything better. The entire Avalanche team streams off the bench to congratulate Nathan MacKinnon on this historic achievement. And then you see Chicago. You're Chicago, and you're looking down at your little feet, your little screen, and you're like, this is a historic achievement. And, you know, we clearly need to win this game to make it into the playoffs. We need to make sure they don't have this goal. Ref, we need to challenge the goal. And the referees have to spend a literal 15 minutes looking at it because a fraction of a second determined that Martin, or maybe he was either Lehkonen or Martin Necas, was just barely ahead of the puck on the blue line. And clearly that gave the Avalanche an unfair advantage over the lowly Chicago Blackhawks, that the Blackhawks felt, we need to take away this historic moment because fuck you. Kind of a bad look, if you ask me.
Classic Chicago, ruining moments for both of our teams since, well, the late 2000s, early 2010s, is when they just wouldn't stop like beating the Sharks in the playoffs.
I mean, I don't know. It's a tough call because if it's your guys against someone else, like you'd want to make the right call, but I don't know. When it's a
If it's
moment
that
when it's
close,
a
like,
moment that big and you're Chicago, who honestly you need to be losing games at this point, like come on, dude. Just let it go. It's one goal. And it was a very early on goal, too. So it's like you had plenty of time to come back after that. Just the team streamed off the bench, bro. Like,
yeah,
they had
it's
you
not
had to challenge it.
not good awareness of the moment. There's no real point to it in the long term, like you said. And with the intent of the offside rule and everything, it's like if it's really that close that it takes 15 minutes like of just freezing the game, like as the NHL, that is not the intent. You are messing with the production from a business standpoint. But to do that to the players where just they're going out here full speed and then just make them sit on their hands, not in the locker room or do their normal routines. No, they just got to sit there and wait. Like it just messes with the flow of a game. Again, not the intent or the purpose of offside challenges. Yes, we want the calls to be right. Yes, it's obviously different if the call is going your way versus against you, but
It's
in
just
such a
it felt
historic moment,
flat.
like
Yeah.
why? Yeah,
Yeah.
just why?
It was very lame. Obviously, MacKinnon would not be denied. They were feeding him the puck all night, and it was only a matter of time before he got it back. So he got it. You know, he's so good. He got 1,000 points twice. What else can you say? And just to wrap this up, Spencer Knight honestly had a really fantastic game. I think he's a great future for Chicago. He's going to be great for them. So I'm glad that they're feeling more certain in that area. But Scott Wedgwood was better. He had multiple highlight reel saves throughout this game. Dude played out of his mind. When we talk about somebody being in the zone, Scott Wedgwood was in the zone. And if MacKinnon hadn't gotten 1,000 points that night, he easily would have been the #1 star. So credit to him where credit is due. But Dom, it is time for your final game from the tank.
Well, this game came on Tuesday, the 11th, at home. The Sharks hosting the Nashville Predators for the third and final time this season. And I just have to start by saying these teams do not like each other.
You don't
After
say.
fighting 3 times in the span of less than 10 seconds of game time in their most recent reading at the tank in January.
Pause. Meecent reading?
Recent reading?
You I
Oh,
think
did I
you,
say recent reading instead of recent meeting? Oh,
it's
God.
reading.
Well, that tells you where my brain's at here.
Oh
Um,
boy, better wrap it
need to
up
get
here.
through this. Yeah. So in their most recent meeting in January, when they fought 3 times in less than 10 seconds, that was when Delandria, Cunnin, and Goodrow all went in back-to-back-to-back fights. In this game, in the first period alone, the Sharks also fought the Predators twice. This time it was Goodrow and Desharnais, the big defenseman acquisition, who's been known to fight every once in a while. That's part of his game. And when we talk post trade deadline, that is something the Sharks needed because Goodrow is not a great fighter, and Desharnais is much bigger, much better, and has that edge to his game. That Goodrow is a leader and he goes out there to fight as a veteran trying to protect his team, but he is not a good fighter. Um, anyway, difference was clear in between those two fights, but crazy to see how much the Sharks and Predators really just don't like each other. And when
I
I
wonder
talked about
why.
rivalries before, this is something that I guess goes back a longer time than maybe I remember or realize, and I need to look into it more. But when I talked about Seattle possibly viewing the Sharks as a rival, I think I was overlooking the team even closer to them in the standings in Nashville, um, as someone who's had a much longer time to dislike and create historic hatred for the Sharks just over the years. So something I need to look into more. Anyway, moving ahead, the Preds went 2 of 5 on the power play in this game and held the Sharks 0 for 2 with their aggressive and physical penalty kills. So once again, The refs were active, and it was not in the Sharks' favor and did not end up well for the Sharks. Both of those power play goals for Nashville were scored in the second period to give them a 2-0 lead to start the third period. I sometimes like to say fun
Third
facts.
period?
Oh my God.
God.
No, now I'm the one smelling burnt toast.
Third period. Oh my
I
god.
also have a cough drop in that's messing with it because I'm like, my throat is dying.
I hope you know, in post, all of those are getting boosted.
Oh
Every
boy.
third period.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. It's gonna be so spectacular. Anyway, the not fun fact: the Nashville Predators this season have scored on 7 of a possible 13 power play opportunities against the San Jose Sharks.
That's tough.
They have scored more often on the power play than the Sharks' penalty kill has been successful. And one could surmise that probably has an effect with why they were able to sweep the full 3-game series versus San Jose, despite every game being close. I mean, every game was separated by a goal. Yes, there was one extra empty netter and one where they won by 2, but these were close games, competitive games. The Sharks were the better team at 5-on-5, but really, really fucking struggled with their special teams against Nashville. Like I've talked about and I've just ranted about the Sharks' struggles on special teams. It is just extrapolated, made so much worse, whatever the right word is here, magnified whenever they play the Predators. And I mean, I talked about multiple games where the Sharks were killing at about 50% of the power plays. They were facing the penalty kill opportunities, and less than 50% is just fucking awful. And just to tie it back into where we started, against the piss-colored franchise, no less. So, just a little fun tie in there that I thought of. However, in the third period, San Jose tied the game out of nowhere really early in the third, like 3 minutes in, and they scored 2 goals separated by merely 14 seconds. The first came from trade deadline acquisition Patrick Giles. This was, in fact, his first career NHL goal. So, very excited for Patrick. Very happy to have him with the Sharks. And it was he had a great game overall and really exemplified the traits that Greer spoke about and valued and why he was acquired, showing the deal to pick him up in exchange for Vanacek. Getting any return was valuable, but this wasn't just any return. This was a return the Sharks actually wanted, and it is working. So that's an important outcome of this being a post-deadline game. On the ensuing faceoff after that, the Sharks were able to win the puck back and set up a chip-in chase into the Predators' zone. And some strong and great forechecking from Barclay Goodrow actually forced a turnover right into the slot where Will Smith was then able to set up Colin Graff for his second career goal. Colin Graff, of course, while we've been talking tonight, he has 2 goals and so has doubled his career goal total just another game later. Not to mention, Corey, he's had a chance on a breakaway where he just nearly scored on Spencer Knight and has hit a post. There
He's
are
been
like 8 minutes left. Can Colin Graff, who has 4 career goals as of this moment, get to number 5 with a hat trick tonight at home against the
it
Blackhawks?
is having a night, man. I love it. I really do.
He has a lot of energy. He's got great awareness for where he's should be moving on the ice. And I mean, he's playing up at times on the second line. I mean, yes, losing Zetterlund hurts. It was a lot. It's too early to say this guy's a replacement. I consider Colin Graff part of the core if we look ahead to next year. When I talk about guys playing for a spot, in my opinion, he should have his locked up if he doesn't already, especially based on his contract and years remaining and everything. Put the man in. He's having a great season whenever he's playing with the NHL team, with the Sharks. So here we are, tie game out of nowhere. Sharks are back in it. Just a mere couple minutes later, of course, Georgiev had to go and ruin my night. And just, Corey, I told you about this, but the man just fucking fumbled the puck. Like, he plays the puck, he's still standing in front of his crease and he's holding it. And then Mario Ferraro is in the corner. Instead of passing it to him, he just did like a small push type pass. Like, he didn't actually pass the puck. He just kind of edged it, pushed it a little bit, like a light tap. And Forsberg came in, crashing in, stole the puck behind the net, threw it out in front to Kiefer Bellows, who made no mistake to extend his arms and put it around the outstretched pad of Georgiev. So completely avoidable, completely lazy. Yes, it's a miscommunication. One could try not to point fingers, but I'm going to point fingers at Georgie and say it was sloppy, stupid, and turned a really great momentum swing absolutely sour and took all of the life out of the Sharks game. I mean, some quick overall thoughts as I wrap this, because the Sharks did lose this game 3-2, which of course made matters worse that this goal was the game-winning goal. That the Sharks had just fought back into it. They were the better team 5-on-5, and this is how they lose the game against Nashville. Ugh, ugh, just putrid. But overall, I mean, I want to say exactly that. They were the better team 5-on-5 all game, but spent too much time on the penalty kill, 10 minutes on the penalty kill to be exact, and faced a determined goaltender in UC Saros, who's no slouch, who is hard to get goals past. And so when they had that momentum in the third and they had the Predators rattled, they needed to capitalize. They needed that momentum more than other times. Obviously, and I've said it before, but the loss of those experienced top penalty killers like Nico Sturm, Jake Wallman, and Luke Cunnin certainly did not help matters. Also, considering Cody Ceci would have been on there previously, going back a couple of months to when he was traded. Um, but the good news is about these trades, and it will get better. The penalty kill will get better. It's something Coach Warsofsky is focusing on. It's something the whole team's focusing on. It's opening opportunities for these younger players to carve out a role for themselves. Colin Graff has been playing on the second penalty kill unit. Seeing Mook Madulin out there playing on the penalty kill. We are seeing more of these young players, these different combinations. It gives these guys an opportunity to earn their spot, to improve. Sometimes the only way to get better is by playing the minutes, you know? You have these veterans who are really great at the penalty kill. They didn't come into the NHL and just be penalty kill masters. That was built over time. So that is the positive I take from this from post deadline, is that they will get better with having more time, more reps, and in a season that doesn't matter if they win or lose. Obviously, I want them to win, but I mean, like you said about Chicago, at a certain point, losing and getting the best odds at Matthew Schaefer to help your defense seems like a reasonable plan. The tank in the tank to get a tank on defense. Why not? Let's just go for 3 there. But I guess as a final fun fact, I said it earlier, but the Sharks have outshot their opponent in 4 straight games now, starting with their 6-2 rout of Buffalo. Yes, the asterisks on the Avalanche game. And technically, with Chicago having the empty net right now with a minute 39, the Sharks are technically out shooting the Blackhawks 25-24 right now. So stay tuned if that becomes 5 straight games. But with that, Corey, I think I have wrapped up all of my analysis for the Sharks for all of the past 7 games I've not yet spoken to. So thank you for supporting this and just focusing on a game episode. Emphasized episode tonight, and thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.
And to be honest, we really haven't talked about games as much in a while. We've had a lot going on in the hockey world lately that I think warranted more discussion. So thanks everybody for being along for the ride. Thank you, Dom, for your insights into the Sharks, and you always find a way to keep it interesting even despite the team's struggles. You make it fun to still follow them. Well, everyone, I'm going to take you home. Your 3 players of the week. Number 3 is the Chicago Blackhawks for being the classiest organization for all the reasons we mentioned above. Number 2 is Scott Wedgwood, who only allowed 1 goal in his 2 appearances and saved 52 of 53 shots. What a fucking animal. And number 1, obviously, Nathan MacKinnon, 1,000 career points. What a milestone. Easily hitting 1,500, if not more, by the end of his career. I anticipate him having Sidney Crosby levels of longevity. So super glad that this guy is on our team, and it's tough to say he might go down at the end of his career as the best Avalanche forward of all time, and I'd be hard pressed to find somebody as good as Nathan MacKinnon who comes after him. But your fun fact of the day is not so much of a fun fact because Dom gave us plenty of those, but it's a conspiracy theory. That's right, everybody.
Ooh.
I want you conspiracy theories. So if you didn't already know, Gabriel Landeskog released his own 5-episode documentary titled A Clean Sheet. I have not yet watched the first episode, but the first 2 episodes have aired so far. In tandem with this, Gabriel Landeskog is doing a massive media tour, not just with the Colorado Avalanche themselves, in which he sat down and gave a long 45-minute interview about everything he's gone through in more detail up to this point, and to promote his new docu-series, but he's also sat in with an extended appearance on Spit and Chicklets to go into even more detail about the injury. But the biggest piece of it all is this 5-episodic docu-series ends on Sunday, April 13th. Dom, do you know what else is on April 13th?
I don't, but can I just say quickly that the Sharks just got an empty netter to make it 4-2?
Oh, wow, you're ahead of me, and I have the game on live. That's weird. That's funny. I'm assuming it was not Colin Graff.
Nope, Tyler Toffoli, although Colin Graff was just a menace in the neutral zone, making it very difficult and forced the turnover eventually.
But anyway.
The pressure. Anyway, continue.
The April 13th is the final day of regular season, at least with the Avalanche. That is their final game that they play. Coincidence? I think not. So, what does it all mean? It means in the final episode of his documentary that coincides with the final day of the regular season. We know Landeskog will not be back for the regular season, but I think this is his way of announcing that he will play in these playoffs. That's my conspiracy.
Imagine everything we've talked about the Avalanche depth, and then out of left
fucking
field,
Landeskog drops in. Yeah, good luck, Dallas. Good fucking luck.
What a way to finish out the episode.
Thank you. Well,
Sharks
everyone.
win, a very fun conspiracy theory. What a day.
Seriously. Well, everyone, the clock is counting down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. Did you know there's a comment section where you can leave your thoughts and questions? If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, leave it below, and we'll be happy to try and answer it. There is a unique poll for you to interact with every episode. The best thing you can do if you like what we're doing here is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and share this podcast everywhere you can, whether that's with your mouse or your mouth. We're serious. Please click the follow button. We got another one. We're up to 13, but I think our goal was like 25. So please, please, please hit the follow button. We love you. We will kiss you on the mouth consensually, or on the, I don't know. We'll kiss you though. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
This is Dom from The Take.
Check out our new episodes every week. Thanks, everyone.